kina semdol ka ke mo fa seda.
This is Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I am your host, Artemis Albosa, back again from another one-week hiatus. And joining me today, as always, we have our co-host, Silver Suspiria, a member of Federation Uprising.
Hey everyone, hopefully you can hear me today. Can they
Indeed.
hear me? Come on, chat.
We'll find out soon. Also joining us on the show today, we have two very special guests. First and foremost, on camera with us, we have Nuke Blast, a member of the Panion Dominion.
Hi, guys.
Hopefully I pronounced your corporation's name right. And I'm assuming I did. All right. Fantastic. And we also have off camera the CEO of the Panion Dominion. He is Ganos Utrigas? I didn't ask your second name.
Just go Ganos. It was one of those auto-generated ones many years back.
What race is your character that auto-generated that?
Was it like the Caldari mercenary ones, I think it was?
Oh, fair enough. So Caldari through and through. Nuke, do you also have a Caldari main? Or
no, I made that one up. So
I mean, like, what race is your character in game?
Oh yeah, Caldari all the way.
All right, fair enough. I was hoping we get like some Mimitar or Galente who switch sides or something like that. But in any case, let's get into today's show. We're continuing a series called What Does LoSec Look Like in 2020? This, in theory, is the last episode. Granted, I thought that a month ago, so we'll see what actually happens. But this should be rounding out the series. We've talked from people from all different areas of LoSec, all different play styles, all different time zones, all different walks of life. And we're rounding it out today, talking to the Caldari militia, returning to faction warfare, which is a key portion of the LoSec ecosystem. But before we get into all of that, we want to first talk about the history of the two players we have on here as guests, find out a little bit about them so that you guys can understand more about their perspective as we discuss the topics on the show. So let's start things off with you, Nuke. How did you get started in EVE?
Yeah, okay. So I'll try and make this as brief as I can, really, so we can talk about fractional warfare. So I started playing EVE back in 2011, and that was actually with a different character. I started getting involved with jet cans in high security and getting involved with 1v1 fights as a very new player. Learned the mechanics of orbiting and scram web and all that good stuff. And I think if it wasn't for that, I may not have stuck with the game. So I'm glad that they had that in the game, even though it wasn't meant to be a feature. I first went into a wormhole as very early on as a character. I was actually in a shuttle. I had a little warp around and came back to the entrance of the wormhole that had been bubbled. And Tengu appeared and he locked me down, he scrammed me, and then he convoed me. Long story short, the guy he saw that I was a new player, took me to his player-owned station, which back in those days was like a bubble with different structures. Showed me around, showed me what the structures were, and then gave me a free rifter and sent me on my way, escorted me back to the hole. So from then on, I got pretty interested in wormholes. I joined a small gang PvP wormhole corporation, Rules of Acquisition, and worked my way up to be an FC. Had about 8 to 14 guys in cloaky T3s with ECM and Logi. Made a ton of ISK living in the wormholes back when nano ribbons were like 7 mil each, I think. And then lived in C2s, C3s, C4s, and briefly in C5s. But I think most wormholers will know that the value of having 2 accounts is really good. You can like watch a wormhole. And basically I created Nuke Blast at this point because I found that it was taking a long time to get fights. And I could have Nuke running in fractional warfare, just kind of sat there getting my PvP fix, whereas it would normally take maybe 3 hours to set up a drop on someone in a wormhole. And then I suppose real life commitment started to take over at this point, and a lot of the guys sort of went separate ways from the wormholes. And what I did, I just kind of went into the fractional warfare scene and just did solo for quite a long time, actually. did solo for maybe, I think it was like 2 years or something like that in fractional warfare. And then eventually I had a bit more time, had a look at fleets that are available. One of the cool things about fractional warfare is that you can look at your available fleets and militia, people on your same side. They can put up a fleet and you can join that. So I joined one of these. And the first fleet I joined was with an FC, quite a famous FC, I think, called Mantle Global Industries. And basically, I turned up. He gave us a free Corax, Tech 1 fitted, of course. And at the time, a free skin. This was the Exoplanet skin. So they had only just come out, I think. And he sent us deep into fractional warfare, and I got hooked. So he was a really good FC, really inspirational. And I immediately joined Hecon after that.
Right on. How'd you get from Hecon into Pan?
Right, yeah. So I made my way up through Hecon. I was dropped in the deep end, so obviously having a bit of FC background and wormholes. Basically, IHUB bashes were a thing, and I was put in charge of 40-man fleets, just bashing these IHUBs, which doesn't sound like a bad task until the pirates show up, and you've got to kind of deal with those. And I'd only been used to really kind of 8 or 10 guys, so that was a learning curve for me. So yeah. From Hecon, basically, it collapsed. I'm sure Gannis will tell you why. But I then joined the Panyan Domin once he set out.
Awesome. So I guess that's a good transition over to you, Gannis. How did you get your start in EVE?
So I started a long time. I think it was like 2006 or 7. Pre 2007, but I never fully understood the game. It's quite a complex game. I was probably in my A levels at the time, which is sort of I was 17 or 18, something like that. And all I did was sort of mission in high sec. I never really got into the game, but I love the idea of it. I could never really get my head around it. Anyway, I went to university, quit the game, came out of university, and was like, right, let's start this up again. So I started this up. High sec, went into this corporation high sec that took it. There were new guys coming from another MMO, and they took it quite seriously, which was pretty good because we actually managed to fight back against the standard sort of war decks you get in high sec. I had a really good time there. But initially, obviously, you want to sort of graduate from that. I started roaming around low sec, and that was in the glory days when you could actually just take a Tech 1 frigate and fight other Tech 1 frigates, not have to run from these snaked pirate frigates and Kikimoras and stuff like that. And I just spending a lot of time in Plexus. I was like, well, Plexus are the sort of capture beacons in faction warfare, just because that's where you go to sort of wait for a fight or find other people. So I joined faction warfare thinking, well, this is like the next step. I think it was in Templars first of all, but I spent quite a while there, but I wasn't in the right time zone really to get in the fleets. And then from there I thought, well, let's give Nullsec a go. Let's do the full round. Spent like a few weeks in Nullsec, didn't like it, came back. So I pretty much stayed in low sec from there. I've been around sort of most of the big Caldari groups. Spent a lot of time in like I said, Templars and Block, but eventually just left due to time zone differences, and ended up in Hecon. That folded about a bit over a year ago, and then I formed. Because when that folded, I was basically shopping around corps, thinking who can I join next, and there was just no one really left, no real Calmer groups in European sort of time zone left. So I thought, well, let's just give it a go. Let's form a corp. Let's see how I do at this, and just see if anyone comes with me. And yeah, that's kind of how it started, really.
Right on. How has your development gone as far as building up the corporation? Were you able to bring over a bunch of refugees, or have you had to slowly build it up from nothing? What's that been like?
Yeah, so
that's my question. Because I remember Hecon vividly, and I don't know if I remember you guys, but it was one of our favorite groups to fight, especially in the EU time zone. So, like, did any of the old guys make it with you?
Yeah, got quite a few over. So I just the corp had essentially folded. So basically, there was a lot of trouble with snuffed out. It wasn't just
Really?
snuff, I can't say. So we were based in sort of. Go on, was that?
I was saying it's a common thread amongst low sec groups who have had struggles. That snuff had something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not entirely snuff because, like, at the end of the day, you can just stage out NPCs and just ignore snuff, kind of. Just don't roam in battleships and you'll be fine. But it was a combination of a few things. Like the strategic fleet was getting really good. So, like, there was an FC called Chichu. It was like very, very good FC.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if Chichu was one of the ones that made it over. He and I had some good goes at it.
Yeah, he was great. I've been on so many fleets, and we were doing quite well. We were fleeting up with the Russians a lot, United fleet. And I remember we got like a 30-man Cerberus fleet going. It was like, this is brilliant for like faction warfare. But there wasn't the small gang stuff going with it. A lot of people were just waiting for the ping, you know. And Chichu kept saying, speaking of comms, he's like, I keep telling people, God, why don't other people fleet up and fly together? Why are they relying on me? And it was kind of everyone relying on Chichu. And Chichu was kind of like saying, look, I think he was going do some stuff with his university, and he wasn't going to be around. We had this big court meeting, which was with the United Fleet as well. And basically, Snuff was coming around destroying our stuff. They took down our Forza, like a Titan. There's nothing anyone could do about it, really. And it's like, let's move out of the war zone, stay in faction warfare, but we move out on the edge, so we don't have to worry about farmers taking the systems. And get a little bit involved with some nullsec fleets and stuff, and the people who really like nullsec stuff kind of, I think there's a guy called like Levi, whatever, joined some of the nullsec groups we're flying with, and it was just, the faction warfare just died off, and I think that was kind of obviously the core of the. This is just my opinions. I was a major part of leadership then. I was just, my title, I just had like junior FC roles or whatever on the IT infrastructure. But there wasn't really that sort of, people weren't really flying together that much in that small gang setting, and things just kind of fell apart from there when we made the move, and there wasn't really anyone to fly within outside the sort of things, and then Chichu left, and yeah, it all just kind of fell apart pretty rapidly. So as I said, right, let's go back. I'm going back to where we were, which is Asakai, which was a bit annoying because it's 4 jumps from Rakapus, which is where Snuff staged out of. I was like, well, we'll just go in the NPC station. It's not a problem. But within a few days of forming, I sent a mail around the corp and just said, by the way, guys, because I think they dropped out of faction warfare, and people are like, but some people are like, but I want to stay fighting in faction warfare, because there was no like leadership to sort of manage that. And I sent a mail around saying, right, I'm going to take whoever, if anyone wants to stay, and I'm going to get this corp going, and we're going to stay in faction warfare. And then very quickly, Calmeron joined, who's one of our directors. Unfortunately, left recently. All in good terms. He went to try some stuff in nullsec. Had a couple of other guys join, and we also, very fortunately, although I wasn't prepared for this at the time, the infrastructure left over from Hecon was transferred over to us. So suddenly we had these citadels. I was like, okay, I have no idea how to actually operate these things, but they were transferred over to us, and then we got a load of Pocos as well, which is in the area, which is really good. But within so I think we had initial about 4 or 5 guys came over, and the first guys, they formed like our director corps. So there's 3 of us now as the directors that came over like straight away, and we started trying to build the corp up, and we had a few others come over, and then we sort of went back to Asakai. As I said, went back to Asakai, started trying to hold the last 2 systems that were there, which were, I think we only had at the time Asakai and Prism left in the war zone. It was like, let's hold on to these systems. But at the time, the rest of Galma were kind of like, I think they got a bit bored. I think Adron Robotics had gone off to nullsec. I think the Law Accords are kind of the other side of the war zone, weren't really bothering it. And there's only a few farmers to defend from. So actually, we managed to hold those last 2 systems. But the main struggle was really the local pirates at the time. So we were like, let's start trying to take some stuff back. But obviously got the new influx of guys was mainly new players from Militia Chat. So we had some local pirates in the area who were just sort of like picking us off one by one, in the plexes, and it was kind of hard work to keep people to sort of focused on trying to actually take some systems back. And then Law Accords took notice and came over and started hitting the citadels. And initially I was like, obviously there's nothing we can do against this. I think we turned up with like Megathron Fleet and Guardians, and we had nothing, we didn't really have it. It was only going a few weeks at the time. So I called for help with United Fleet, and I think the first time we managed to just get lucky with a few. I think one of the timers, I just got everyone in Blackbirds. we just made pings all around this citadel, and just thought, let's really make it hard work for them. And luckily, one of the local pirate groups obviously came to the area to see the timer, and they sort of like, well, do we shoot at a load of blackbirds that are walking around pings sort of 200 kilometer away, or do we shoot these megathons? They did, and luckily the sort of managed to. I guess, as I said, we got lucky. Pirates this time came to our aid, and our citadels lived. And then they came back, and this time United Fleet, who we were flying with Hecon, came to help us and kind of took the reins a bit, and we just joined the fleet. So we had a lot of citadel fights in those early days, which was pretty interesting. But anyway, so we sort of kind of stabilised the situation there a bit, kind of got set up, and we got our fleets going, and we could sort of fight back against the local pirates a bit. We got more coordinated. I've got a load of ships on the hangars and contracts to give out to people, like flying them all to get sort of defeat these Kaiti Kikimoras, all these sort of things. And we started to push back, and we started to take back the war zone. We were sort of pushing up some of the pipes, but we weren't actually fighting Galenti at the time. It was mainly, like I said, we were just defending it against like local pirates and roaming groups. There was no real gals around. It was kind of faction warfare compared to what it is today, which is actually sort of having a bit of a revival. It was pretty dead in those days. This is about a year ago. I think this is going back February 2019. But we started pushing back to the war zone, and I think we sort of coordinated with United Fleet as well. And we had enough systems. We were like, right, let's go to tier 2, and we all put the LP in the hubs. And we got ourselves up to tier 2, which is really good. When you do that, it starts to attract the farmers. But then a Goonswarm group called PLA, or they had a branch, a People's Liberation Army. They had a branch in faction warfare, which I think Nuke will take over in a minute. And they were there essentially just to farm. And they moved next door to us in Okamon, and we started pushing this system. And some guys from Goonswarm got in contact with me and sort of said, look, they played sort of like this really casual, like, you know what, we're just going to say it how it is. You're not going to take that system. These guys, these PLA guys, they're there to farm and make LP. You're not going to get in the way of that. And I said, like, well, this is everything I despise about faction warfare. Sort of, in all respects, no, we are going to fight. And and they threaten they're going to destroy everything, and they're going to push us out of the war zone, all this sort of stuff. And I said, well, doesn't matter. I'm not going to back down from this fight. So we started pushing in Okamon, and I think Nuke will take over and give you some details on how that went.
Well, before you go there, like when you say farming, it was a group that joined the Galente militia to do farming missions.
Yeah. So it was PLA. They were a Goonswarm group, and they had like PLA something. I can't remember what it was, and it was literally they just said, our members there, new guys, and they had a lot of them. They really did have a lot of them, and it was just like they just want to farm LP. That's it. Because at the time, Galenti if we knocked them down a bit, I think they were still at tier 3, tier 4, but the Galenti was still pretty high up in terms of the tier level, which means you can make ridiculous amounts of LP. One from plexing, and most importantly from mission money. And I think they said that they're there pretty much. We're making LP. You're not going to stop us. Try, and we're going to kick you out.
Yeah, so this has been a common thread over a bunch of groups that we've interviewed over the last few months about farmers, people that aren't really participating in the faction warfare mechanics of defending and attacking systems. They're there to run the missions and make the ISK, and that sort of weighs on how the whole war between the militias work, right? Because you are going after Galente systems. Now here's a large, very oppressive group potentially saying, "Now we like it the way it is, man," and they're just farming the missions to make money.
Well, and I found it amusing how you expected that to happen. It's such an integral part of factional warfare that you just offhandedly described. We put it up to tier 2 because we wanted to attract farmers over to our side. Like, it's just part of the mechanics now. The farmers are effectively NPCs who are part of the war mechanics.
Yeah, there's a lot. There'd be massive debate going, why did the farmers switch? And I think obviously, as you know, EVE is a real economy, and you get inflation, and the LP starts to lose value, and then farmers, again, this is my opinion, start to not farm as much, and then you see the other militia go up to tier 2. You're like, their LP value is quite low. And I think initially someone has to do the hard work and basically grind through systems at tier 1, which is really not a profitable thing to do.
No, and that's the job of the militia, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The actual guys who care wind up grinding, and then the farmers just follow whoever's doing the work.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like a thing of like, you take the key systems, and then the farmers can kind of take care of the rest of the war zone almost. The quiet systems that you don't really want to go and spend because you're not going to get any fights from it. Because at the end of the day, the reason why we plex is because, one, we get some LP out of it, but most importantly is you get fights doing it, and that's our content really.
Right on. Anyway, we interrupted you. PLA, they said we're going to destroy you if you try and take our systems. You said, well, screw you guys, I'm taking your systems anyway. What happened?
Okay, so it was PLA Fleet. I've just looked it up. It's PLA Fleet. That's who they were. They were Chinese players, and what was quite interesting, it was around about April time. I just started listening to Talking in Stations, and they were talking about the players coming over from the Chinese server. And then all of a sudden in my local area, there's all these guys trying to run these plexes. And I remember listening to Madarol explain that basically paying for EVE with a credit card isn't really that possible. So I kind of linked that these guys must be trying to make cheap ISK from doing the LP of the sites and fractional warfare. But of course, we weren't going to have that. So we put up a fight. It was really interesting because you had these hordes of lower skill point tunes, which are a lot more different to what we were used to fighting, the pirates, but loads of them. And of course, there was a time zone difference. So I actually really miss these times with fighting PLA. I think Sunday mornings I would log on and I'd just see a sea of red in Okamon, and I'd go in there with my Raven or whatever and just have a blast, So, yeah.
Luke's got a really good video actually. He does a lot of streaming, recording it, where he gets to a large, and I think you light your MJD and go micro jump drive the Raven, go 100 kilometers above. And what's great about the plexes is you can only warp relative to the beacon. So they had to warp to the beacon and then burn up to get him. And you see this horde of players burning up to him, and he's in his Raven shooting down. It's good fun to watch.
Yeah, the large plexes are great. They're like a mini Alliance tournament sort of arena. I love it.
But with no boundaries, so you can MJD without fear of pulling in Elise Randolph.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to it. So you're fighting the hordes, which I find really ironic because to the pirates are sort of the high-skilled players, and the Galent and the militias, in your case the Kaldari militias, are the hordes of low-skill point T1 ships fighting them. And then you get even further down the totem pole, and now the militias are the high-skill point players and the expensive ships, and the farmers are the hordes of T1 ships fighting back. I find that rather amusing.
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, it was for us, it was a mass because I think we're fighting a lot of Dark Spectrum at the time. And they're very high skill point players, very well skilled. They'll fly the best ships, they'll fly high grade implants. Very hard to fight against. You have to get very organized to put up a defense against that. But these guys were just YOLOing at you. And I remember I was in a Condor once and just holding novice down against loads of these frigates that just kept burning, and you could just pick them off at will. It was really good fun. But they did get organized in the terms of the big fleet they could put together was to a point we couldn't really, if they got the numbers going, we couldn't really contest it. But what they never kind of got the head around how faction warfare worked. So they would form up. I remember once they formed up like a 20-man Osprey Navy fleet and sat in a medium. And we're like, okay, well, we'll take the novice and the small. And they never really tried to contest that. So at the end of the day, we kind of won the percentage battle, which I think maybe says a bit about faction warfare in terms of, I think, should the novice be worth more than medium and large? But there we go, or the same amount for less time. And then they started doing things like, okay, we'll put one guy in this plex. So I remember they put an Osprey Navy in like a medium plex, and then they ran the rest of them in a large. And I just renamed my ship to exactly the same fit. They had all those ships named the same. Went into the medium, they had no idea I was coming because I was named the same. And then we quickly ganked that one and then managed to get out before the horde arrived. And it was just this sort of guerrilla fighting. And they had no real... They just didn't have that understanding of you've got to take every plex, you've got to hold every one, and we could kind of fight around that. And it was like, Nuke, how long did we do that for? I think we were fighting for like 2 or 3 weeks over this. I mean, back and forth. They were trying to hit Asakai and we were trying to hit Okamon.
Yeah, it was 3 weeks that was going on for, but they kind of got their revenge, if you want to move on to that.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing to talk about, though. There's a way to fight plexing when you're outnumbered, right? And it's to do just that, is to be clever and be in a comp that can take multiple plexes, and that's why a lot of people like, well, why don't you just ship into like 17,000 battleships and take the system? Well, you can't. You can take the large, sure, but while you're taking the large, I'm going to nuke all the smalls and novices, and I'm going to win the contest, right? And I like that mechanic because it allows you to build a strategy around winning the percentage contest even when you're vastly outnumbered. So I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing about faction warfare. Really, really good point about it. But anyway, so the PLA thought they'd take the fight against our citadels because we were staging out citadels because the system we're in, Asakai, has a station with kick out. If anyone doesn't know what kick out means, it basically is a dangerous
I remember
station.
that station.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'd undock, and if you got black screen, your black screen would appear, and you're outside. You're now pretty much outside docking radius. The pirates loved it. Yeah, we all lost ships that way. So they came for our citadels, and I think we'd had so many citadel fights this time. I mean, we've gone through. It was quite stressful actually because I wasn't a big FC. I was just sort of little take the Plexin fleets out, and here I am trying to FC these sort of citadel fights, which was had again a lot of help from my Russian friends. A shout out to Slava and Donchak and those in United Fleet. Without them, I think one of them as well. They dropped Titans to defend Dreads to defend one of our citadels with 4 junks within Rakapus of snuff, and obviously they actually saved the citadel because then too much distraction of the Dreads, but the Dreads went down. Yeah, we've got a lot of respect for those guys for what they did for us in those early days. But anyway, citadels, the PLA came for our citadels, and we had some interesting fights for that. They used this comp, just tornadoes, which was very because we fought back, we hit theirs. I remember we didn't do very well. I was in some fleet, I think it was Cerberuses and Caracals or something like that, trying to fight on one citadel. Obviously, I know it's not a good comp for taking citadels down, which we'll get into later. We kind of adapted to that, and they'd have this like 40-man tornado fleet with loads of inertial stabilizers in lows and basically sensor boosters in the mids, and they'd warp in,
Wind
bang.
runners.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, take one out, warp off. Take one out, warp off. And we managed to defeat once by just having loads of combat interceptors, or not combat, just normal interceptors. I think Don Chak was FC in this fleet. It was a long time ago, obviously, about a little under a year ago. And just kind of like swarming your fleet with, I think we were Feroxes and Ospreys at the time, with these interceptors. So whenever they warp in, just get a point and you just basically trade 1 for 1. And 1 Osprey, 1 Ferox was less than 1 tornado. And that was one defense against that. But unfortunately, eventually they went to Snuff, paid Snuff, and Snuff came and finished off remaining citadels for us and basically put us into the NPC station. I think Nuke has a video again of us sitting around watching a Titan taking down our Astra House. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. They brought in 2 Titans, one with Hawes, so that we couldn't really do anything, and the other one was just bashing, and we just sat there and watched it go,
Yeah, I think again, this is off the top of my head, so I might be able to, if someone there really cares, they can scroll through the kill modes and find it. But I believe Wangs took that one, because I remember we formed the tornadoes this time. We were like, we're going to do the tornadoes because we can't compete with the Guardians of Drekavax that were hitting one of our citadels. And I think it worked for us. We're like, yeah, we got a Guardian kill this thing. It's brilliant. And then they bugged off and dropped some Dreads on there. And it's like, okay, great. So that's citadel I lost. I think it was that one. And then the other one went down to the Snuff Titan, wasn't it? But I might be wrong. I definitely know, like, Nuke's got a video of the Snuff Titans taking them down. So we were kicked into the NPC station, which was a bit of a pain. We had, a lot of members got a bit frustrated because they were dying on the undock to like local pirate groups, and because it has kick out and that. But we kept up the fight against PLA from the NPC citadel, and we got the system vulnerable after a lot of hard work. And basically, they had a lot of stuff in the NPC rather than the citadels, because I think they had a bit of trouble with Snuff initially, and then they obviously paid. Well, let's say they paid. I was told by them that the Snuff had been paid to take down these citadels, basically. And they had a lot of stuff in the NPC, so they kind of basically then left. They left the war zone for good. And it was like it was like a defining moment for us, because it's like this could have gone really badly. We could have lost. We could have lost our home system and all this, but it was really good because we actually, fought as the underdogs and we won, and we took Okamon, which was a massive thing for us.
It's got to be a really big morale boost, especially after just getting like your teeth kicked in by Snuff.
Yeah, I would say teeth kicked in by Snuff. I mean, we lost so much. I mean, like we'd occasionally take battleships out and fight, and it's just like pretty much always ended up in some hot drop. I think I've definitely lost a few Ravens to high angle weapon Titans before they got nerfed. But yeah, it's but we did. We just accepted. Okay, we're not going to have the infrastructure. We're going to based in the NPC station. But we still had some Pocos, so we're making some good ISK from them. They're a really good location. We're making some ISK from them. And we started to win back more of the war zone. I think the farms have switched, and we're pushing, and actually the front line came quite further away from Asakai. And we thought the one little stubborn system was a Galenti system called Nisua, which I think is one of the longest held Galenti systems, and we had to push for it and just couldn't take it. It just completely failed.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those legendary Galenti systems that you'll get every vet known to man come out to defend. Nisua, there's a couple of them. Villarreal. It's among those very hotly contested ones.
Yeah, it was, and as we found out, and there's kind of a bit of a joke amongst our players. This is around the time of deplexing ventures. So what you could do is you could literally just ship in 40 unfitted ventures. It would cost you nothing, and you'd sit your character in in any of the plexes in a venture, and you could just alt tab off and just deplex these systems down. If you hear your ship getting attacked, you just warp off because it's warp stabbed or warp core stabbed or whatever. And there's a player called Damson. If he's listening, we've got a lot of respect for this guy, Damson. It's a bit of a joke when we see him in the system. It's like, right, game over. And he just somehow, not just him, but he was flexing there a lot. It was funny. But we couldn't take that system. We kind of accepted. And there's a lot of, this is around the time a lot of pirates realised you could, they took away gate sliding. Now, obviously, if anyone listened to previous podcasts, I know you've talked a lot about gate sliding. But they would sit with a cloaked Loki above the gate somewhere, cloaked up. These are the gates to get into the faction warfare complexes. And you'd land on your frigate. Loki decloaks, bang, dead, and it's right back to the station. And there were so many players. We would mark them all. We'd know who it was, but there's always these pirates in there, and it just became we couldn't hold and have enough time zone coverage to take the system, and we're just losing ships. We had some really good fights in large, some good fights against the local pirates and larges, but our small stuff, our standard frigates and destroyers, were just getting murdered by these Lokis. So we thought, let's make a bit of a change. And we thought we'd move over to Nenamalia. And it was about this time as well, we lost all our Pocos to snuffed out as well. They took all them from us.
I think we had Athanor as well, right?
Yeah, I think that went down as well. That went down, and when was that? It was next door to Ascar, wasn't it? Yeah, so we lost all our remaining infrastructure. It's we're living out this station, which is got kick out. It's not good. No infrastructure left. Snuff had taken the whole lot down. So we thought, let's move to this right bang in the middle of the war zone, Nenamalia, and that puts us right next to Villarreal and the other frontline systems. So we made a move over there and sort of kept up the fight, really. And I think, Nuke, did you want to go from there with the last bit?
Yeah, can do.
Bold move, Cotton, moving to Nen. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so do you want to do moving to Nen, or will you continue, or do you want to do?
I'll continue again. I'll step in later.
Okay, so moved to Nen, and it was great because it was new local people to fight. I think the first fleet we had, we fought against Rogue Kaldar Union, who they're kind of pro Calmo guys, but they were local pirates there. And we had some really good fights with them, and we think we still maintain a few ties with some of the players today. And it was really good. It's new environment, and what's great from there is you can just roam to any part of the war zone within a few jumps. It's really good. And the Galenti had kind of started to fight back now. They were holding now. They were holding. We assigned north, east, south, and west of the war zone according to the maps, but they were holding the west of the war zone now. Villarreal wasn't going down. I think GMVA were stopping that from happening. Villarreal Accords were stopping that from happening. We were trying to also poke at Evolan, which was just before I Aim to Misbehaves, which is the second most active alliance in Galway. We're having some good fights there, but that was holding as well. But yeah, we were right on the front line and getting some really good content there. But again, we were happy to live out our NPCs because we can't defend our citadels. From Villarreal Accords can form a much better fleet than us in terms of the strategic fleet at the time. We also had Wangs, who were able to just destroy us with impunity as well. They took down all our citadels. So we're just going to have to suck it up and live out this NPC station, really. But yeah, they were good times. That was around, I think, RVB came into the war zone as well at this time.
It was around about November.
To help out our memory, which side did RVB join?
They joined Calmill, which was for us was great news because it was we'd been consistently like the highest, most active corp in Calmill for like, or one of them like top 3, and having, we at the end of the day we weren't that big. I think we had about 30 active PvPers or something like that, which is obviously not that big really. So it's nice to have another Calmill group that you just back you up a bit.
It was nice having the extra numbers, so our fleet started getting a bit bigger. We were going in fleets on comms with the RVB guys, and when they put the structures up in Ville, we tried our best to assist with that, but it was just chaos. We resorted to our Caldari ways of the cheap ECM ships and going in there trying to jam out Logi and things, but crazy sort of 3-4-way battles with Trigger Happy coming in with nightmares. It was great fun though.
Yeah, they sort of suffered the same fate you guys are talking about, right? So there's a situation going on in LowSec, and maybe a transition to like current stuff, like where only certain groups are allowed to have structures, right? And there's a couple of groups that have deemed who's allowed to own structures, and right now it's mostly like a couple of groups in Galente, not even all groups in Galente, right? Like Aderon probably not going to be able to hold structures, but you feel like this is a problem at all? Because like RVB was like, oh, well, they killed all our structures and that was cool, but
yeah, like, so to go on to that, like I kind of missed it when we tried to take Nissor. It was like the standard practice is in faction warfare now is get yourself a citadel in the system so you can quickly reship. And we had a couple of our German friends tried twice to put down citadels, and both times Valor Accords and Wangs took it down within like before Kini Lanka. We tried to defend it, but we just don't have the numbers, the skill points, just to sort of compete with Valor Accords and Wangs combined. Same thing, we tried to put a citadel down in Avalon to help us push that, and we were actually prepared to defend it this time. We had a few capitals, but they showed the hand a little bit too early, and we realised that they had so one of the Galente alliances aimed to misbehave, kind of very close with the initiative, and one of our battleship fleets got dropped on by supers, and we realised, hold on, in the same system, we were thinking about maybe sort of like should we, because this is now snuff was sort of dying out now. I think they were going, which was great. For us it was really good news, and we were thinking, do we give it a shot? But again, there's no point. We just physically, we cannot defend against these citadels, and it got taken down. We didn't even try and defend that one because we knew the supers were on standby. RVB have had the same thing, that they can't anchor the citadels in those systems. Which I think that's fine. In faction warfare, you should own the system, get the NPCs and stuff. That's not a problem. But what we found recently is that the Gals can just. We've been fighting, real current. We've been fighting really hard for basically 3 systems, which unfortunately last one fell on Saturday. And fair play to Galente, they've done a very good job of it. I'd like to think we gave them a really good fight for it. But they can just drop a citadel in these systems. There's nothing we can do about it. Literally nothing we can do about it, which is a bit unfortunate. I know if you're putting this in, well, go and poke it. The problem is, we know Valor Accords will, not Valor Accords, Wangs will back them up with those citadels. Which is just really hard to try and fight against it. I mean, on that note, we have actually, because we knew we were always going to be fighting kind of underdogs, we did start using Bush Ravens. I think this is going back to our Asakai times. We took down a few. We were practicing with them against like local pirates with about 4 command destroyers and only about 5 Ravens. It's not big numbers, but 5, 6 Ravens is actually quite a lot of DPS.
So the change to limit the number of people who could be boosted to 25 didn't affect you at your
No, it won't affect us at all. We got them out we got them out a couple of weeks ago actually. But it was one of these things where I was just thinking, what can we do to compete with citadels, which doesn't involve brawling it out, because it will always end bad for us. Like if we just commit to a mass brawl on Citadel, we're going to get wrecked. Like we're just going to get wrecked by the bigger groups that Wangs and those guys in Initiative when we were trying to take Avalon. So we thought we'd try it, but I was looking into it because I know it was Initiative initially did it in nullsec, and one of the big things for them was, well, you have to bubble your Ravens so that combat probers can't get on top of you. Right, and that was like a real key part of this doctrine. I thought, well, let's just give it a go. Let's see how this works, how this mechanic works. So we hit a few citadels without no one sort of fighting, and then one of the local pirate groups, who I think was Dark Spectrum at the time, We hit some of those because they had some citadels. This is going back to Asakai times when we were in Asakai. They had some citadels in the area, like right off the NPC station. So wait there, see us undocking, and knew we'd have black screen when undock and things like this, and try and get us in the undock. And they formed up, and they were trying to combat probe us down. Now, what actually happens is, as soon as if you can get it early, if you can see them appearing on grid, if you hit the bush, you can actually get out before they land. So this worked really well for us. And I think we also hit some PLA citadels at the time with it, which was really good. But even that, there are counters to it. There's a lot of counters to it, like swarms of combat. Yeah.
So tell me, most people attribute the decline to faction warfare was due to citadels, right? It took away a lot of the mechanic of controlling systems. To me, this is now manifesting in a new way. Now we have a pirate group, or a group of pirate groups, and by pirate I mean when you're in faction warfare, anyone not in faction warfare is generically called a pirate. So groups like Wangs, Trigger Happy, Hobos, Init, all these players that are in LowSec can influence the fight of militia by just disallowing or siding with one side or the other and disallowing you that citadel, which is an extreme advantage. If the Galente militia can put up citadels at will and have ships in every system they're fighting in, it puts Caldari at a huge disadvantage. So to me, this is like another growing weighing down on faction warfare. You feel like that? You feel that drag?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always said with citadels, like at the end of the day, I don't think that's the biggest thing with faction warfare. A lot of people say it's citadels that kill faction warfare. I don't think it is, because I still think system control is so valuable. Certainly from our end, like having an NPC to dock in makes a huge difference, and also the LP stuff. I mean, having the citadel in there, the faction warfare fights, a lot of them do come down to fast reships. And
but to me, when I was doing it, it's crucial, right? The faster you get back in that plex after a fight, the more seconds go in your favor. So in a hotly contested siege, the group that can attrition the best and get back in that plex the fastest is going to win.
So if it's not citadels, in your opinion, what is the biggest impact on faction warfare that has led to its decline in the past?
Right, so give you an idea of the citadels. I think with the citadels, we contended with citadels from, I think, Galenti really started hitting back at the Warzone New Year's. I think we woke up New Year's morning and realised 5 systems were flipped. We were like, okay, they're coming. And we started trying to prepare, get the hangars stocked and stuff. And we fought through Ultranet. That took several weeks. It became like the most dangerous systems in LowSec. We fought through Nenomade, Fine took that same thing. Everyone, they had a sit-down system. Now, we got loads of content from it. We really enjoyed those fights. It was really good old-fashioned faction warfare fights. They were happening while citadels were there. So I don't think it's fair to say citadels destroyed faction warfare. But it is a pain in the ass when you can't obviously take them down their staging system. And as you mentioned, the reship times are massive. You know, if it becomes an attritional battle, which faction warfare is less about that now, but the recent big system siege we had, they are still attritional warfare. The reship time is massive. But I think in terms of, okay, why has faction warfare declined? So I think there's quite a few things that kind of go with this. One of them, one big thing for me is a lot about loyalty. Like, it's very demoralizing knowing actually, I think the farmers have such a big influence. And I think the loyalty of actually, you can just switch sides at will. And we've found, there have been Cloud-Eye players just going to the winning team. They're leaving and they're going to Galenti. And it just means you get this one side which is like beaten down all the time. It's hard to really recover from, because there's no rewards for loyalty, and I never understood why that's the case. You have ranks in faction warfare, but it's essentially meaningless. It really is essentially meaningless. You can have one ult in one side, one ult in the other, and you just literally play whichever one's at the highest tier. And that to me is a massive factor. Nuke, what would you say about the loyalty stuff? Do you agree with me on that one, or?
Pretty much right on. Yeah, I agree with you with that one. Yeah.
The other one as well, I find Plex mechanics can. I love the Plexes. I think they're the most fun fights I've had in EVE. But I think it's very hard to progress as a group. So let's say you take a group like Tempests, who are now, they're very good strategic fleet, all this sort of stuff. Now, what's very good about the Plex is it does force you to split up. It really forces you to split up. And it gets your fleet, rather than just one big fleet against the other big fleet, who's got the most numbers wins. It actually, creates this sort of terrain that you have to fight around. And that's a really good thing. However, it always boils down to frigates at the end of the day. You can be like, right, we're lowered numbers, or let's get some cruisers and go take this medium and let's contend them there. Then a novice respawns, they go to novice. You have a 20-minute timer for the medium to get 0.7%. They have a 10-minute timer for the novice to get the same 0.7% of the system. So it always resorts to this frigate sort of fighting. So a lot of groups, not all of them, Velour Corps have been around for a long time. A lot of groups end up getting really bored of that. And they don't. So I think what we do quite well is we do the plexing, but we also, if pirates come by, we will take the opportunity, we will upship and we will fight them in a large, and that kind of gives players a bit of sort of that variety. But really getting into the faction warfare, actual plex mechanics itself, there's no real encouragement to upship, and I think my personal experience, a lot of players leave because of that. They sort of graduate faction warfare, and it's very hard to I guess, for groups to sort of build up this player base and really get stuck into it. And now, like I said, you've got loyalty, you've got things with citadels, and I think that's kind of combined. But I think the big one, I mean, you look back at like the glory days of faction warfare, I honestly think people have just got a little bored of mechanics. It's become a bit stale. The big groups aren't there, and you need these groups, you need these content creators to get new players in and give them some sort of role. Just joining the militia on your own can sometimes be a little bit, you just go run a few plexes and there's no one really to fly with. Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I mean, citadels are massive, but there's a lot of other factors that go on there.
I think it's a good point. I think, for a long time, faction warfare has had this ceiling to it, right? And that you eventually were kind of expected to graduate from it. And you're right, like groups like, parts of Wangs that were heavily into faction warfare wanted to fly the bigger and better stuff. And those things don't apply to the actual mechanic of faction warfare. You're right. No,
and I think you need a balance. I think you can't just have it as N+1 wins, because that's the beauty of faction warfare. But I just feel they need a little bit, maybe variety, just a little bit, maybe put more weighting on the large plexes. I don't know, but I think there's ways you can do that, or make like a couple of places in the war zone where there's like a big gang capture beacon where you have to get your fleet together and go capture it, and it's only a couple in the war zone at one time. Just a little bit more than just sort of like, okay, we're going to take the medium or whatever, and then novice spawns, right? Get the Merlins, get the Etrons, let's go.
Yeah, I think like it's an Eve problem too, right? The N-1 thing. I mean, a lot of problems can be solved with N-1, but given the climate and low-sec, what does low-sec look to you guys in 2020? And part of that question is, what's your take on this whole what's going on with Aderon and GMVA? Two groups in faction warfare that aren't really getting along too well. Is this an opportunity for CalMill to capitalize on, or what do you think about that?
So in terms of the guys coming for our systems, like we've had some really big sieges going past the past couple of months. We haven't seen massive amount of Aderon there. Now this is where it's quite interesting, is that Aderon guy approached us and said, look, we're not turning up to any more iHub bashes. We want a healthy faction warfare, and we don't see the point in grinding you down to dust anymore. I think like Julius Sota last week was on your show. And he sort of he was sort of said, we are grinding the CalMill down to dust, and a lot of, and right, why not? It's faction warfare. That's what you do. They need to come for us.
Yeah, he's like into the RP and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's like there's there's not much from CalMill left. If you look at like Caldari State, go top corporations, there's not a lot there. We're like literally, I'm not going to say we're the last people in faction warfare, we're the last group.
Right? Yeah. If anyone cares about the entire health of faction warfare, it's Juliana Soter. So when he's doing that, he's trying to prod your side as well, right? Like when he says, we're grinding Caldari to dust, he wants people to be like, hell no, you're not doing that, and like go to your aid too.
Yeah, and I'll kind of get back to the point of Aderon, and I think a lot of them are saying like Mantle's been saying things in local, like for new shoots. Was it something like from ash new shoots will rise? This sort of stuff like that. And they want to really sort of and we rise to it. We've been fighting as hard as we can, and we're going to continue fighting as hard as we can. But there's not many groups left, and Adrian approached us from the view of, look, we don't want to push you guys anymore. We almost that they had a different tack to it. Now, I'm not saying which side's necessarily right on this, and they were like, look, we're not turning up to iHub bashes. We don't want to sort of like push you out of the war zone, this sort of thing. But this was kind of also on the side of they don't agree, which you've talked a lot about. They don't agree with how they don't like how Wangs are involved with law accords and all those guys. And obviously that's what a lot of the Civil War is about, is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
No, I think you've hit it. Yeah. They did have a disagreement with that pirate aspect of GMVA. Yep. Yeah,
so they're fine. Now they've formed this anti-Wangs, or let's say they've formed. There's a lot of groups involved in this. There's a lot of groups involved. This anti-Wangs coalition. They said, look, do you want to get involved? And I said, you know what? Going back to our beginning, we've lost citadels to Wangs and stuff. We see these groups, Wangs and Snuff, as really the sort of real bad guys of lowsec, and this isn't like I think that Wangs are like this group of real nasty players, but I just think them as a big group with supers in lowsec, I just don't agree with them. I don't agree with that in EVE. I think go to nullsec, but that's my opinion. So we're like, yes, we'll join you. We don't even care about this civil war between Adrian. It's just like, this is a chance. This is our chance to almost get back a little bit. So we joined some of the initial stuff. Like I think there's a big fight over one of the Athenals, and we kind of we didn't join the main fleet. We formed our own one with these Ravens, and we sort of the Wangs Macarials came in, started rolling out with the coalition fleet. And we sat 300 kilometers away and started hitting this citadel, and luckily just got it. The fleet gave us enough of the distraction to take this thing down almost. And then we're involved at the beginning, but then we got a bit distracted with our systems getting really, really heavily pushed. We went onto full faction warfare defense mode. Meanwhile, that coalition continued to sort of like hit times and stuff. And we've been getting into it recently. Like I think I was. Last night took down one of the citadels in an Abaddon fleet, and night before that we failed on a timer with some Ravens and stuff like that. But yeah, so we've been involved with it. In terms of what does it look like? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, so this is interesting to me because it sounds like you're using the opportunity to strike back at Wangs and the pirates rather than an opportunity for Galmil to be weak and take back more systems.
Yeah, so we've kind of accepted the pendulum has fully swung right now. All we're going to do is we really want to be that thorn in the side, and we were up until Saturday, and we lost our last sort of home system, so to speak. But we're going to keep fighting there. But for us, the sword of Damocles hanging over us right now are these big pirate groups. We can't take down the Citadel in the system because yes, Villa Accords at the end of the day right now has a better strategic fleetness in terms of if they go and brawl out the Citadel. But there's this, like as I said, this sword of Damocles hanging above us. Right. And for us, it's this chance to get back at them. Really, I mean, we lost everything to these big pirate groups, and at the time, Wangs were very heavily involved with stuff. So for us, it's not so much like. It is literally just that, a chance to get back at these big pirate groups, really.
I also don't want to glance over the fact that you just mentioned that the war zone is 100% flipped in the Galente favor, right? So that means
pretty much.
You have no citadels, you have no NPC stations to stage out of in faction warfare lowsec. So where'd you guys go? Where do you live?
Well, so we do still have. So basically, we were in Nenamalia at an NPC, and this is the bit we've missed. And we said, right, let's move to Enelori, but we are going to. I basically said, look, at the end of the day, National House is relatively cheap. If it comes to it, we can just put some right. But we put some infrastructure down in Enelori, where we're holding right now, and that's no secret. Everyone knows it's there. We've had Wangs threatening against it, but and we know at any moment if they really want to take it down, they can. So far, we're still there. In terms of what happens if they go, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But the bottom line is we are going to stay in faction warfare, and we will keep fighting. But yeah,
got it.
It's a tough one. It's not, guys. It's not an ideal situation right now. Because the other thing is,
I don't think any of the groups there are interested in wiping you out of the war zone because content is content. But
exactly. That's
so
all.
to
I think I'll say
me, all the groups we've interviewed in this series, it's always at the heart of this issue are the pirate groups, right? Are you with the pirate group? Are you against it? Are you for them being in the war zone? Are you not? Do they serve your benefit? Do you not? And it's creating this conflict around pirates and not the faction warfare mechanic. Do you see that? Like this year, I think is all going to be about who holds sway in low sec and a lot less about faction warfare system control.
In terms of the bigger picture, I think you're right. I think it is going to be about who holds the power in low sec, and I think I'm hopeful for this coalition because the thing is, this coalition, they're not like one big group. There are lots of very individual groups coming together. So we see it if Snuff get a real hard time with it, not Snuff. Wangs, Snuff Wangs, whatever. Wangs, if they have a hard time with it, we see it as well. If that then group coalition sort of has victory, then they break up, and there's no massive, super capital fleet hanging over us. So for me, it's the only real in our area of low sec. I'm only really talking about the Black Rise sort of Placid sort of area. There's one big group that can cause a lot of trouble, which for us, as in real big group, and that's Wanks. And if they, for whatever reason, lose this fight, which I'm not, I can't really speculate on what's really going to happen. For us, that would be a great thing because to give you an example of what happened when Snuff went down, we'd be confined to just the Plex sort of mechanics and stuff. We hadn't really been able to get involved with, the other side of things, getting having infrastructure, making some ISK. Snuff went down, and for the first time, we actually FC'd our own capital fleet. I mean, it was only 3, but it's massive for us, because some other nullsec group came in and tried to take one of our citadels. We had a moon, an Athanor, tucked away, hoping no one would know about it, to make a bit of ISK, and they tried to take it down because they wanted that system. And we had this great fight. They had 2 capitals, we had 3, and it's like, this is for us. One of the biggest fights. We had like 20 Ravens backing up. We had help from like a lot of other people. We had help from RVB, who were in for Calmel at the time and stuff. But we FC'd it. We provide like logistics and the sinos and stuff like that. We wouldn't have even considered it. It wouldn't have even been like. It was just like Snuff. No, we cannot field capitals, but because they're gone, and Wangs are not as oppressive as Snuff. They're not as oppressive, and this is kind of a bit out of the way. We were able to do this, and for us it's great. It's like, we may do faction warfare mechanics, but now we're offering a bit more of an opportunity for some of the more experienced players to get the capitals out. We got a battleship fleet going. That's a really good thing for us. And any groups that sort of replace Snuff, which we were very worried that Wangs would do, it just goes back to how we were before. Okay, let's live out the NPC. Let's just stick to frigates and destroyers and the novices, which is a bit of a pain. But in terms, sorry, go on.
You mentioned at the top of the show that faction warfare has sort of been having a resurgence lately, and sort of continuing our discussion on the impact of pirates on faction warfare. Do you think that pirates are the cause for this resurgence of faction warfare, or do you think it's player drama around the pirates that the cause for the resurgence? What do you think is the reason that faction warfare has had a breath of life put back into it?
To be honest with you, I don't really know. I mean, in terms of, I don't think it was the identity of the pirates. It was almost like, to me, and there's probably, if there's people listening, I'd be really interested to hear their opinions on it. But to me, it was kind of like RVB came into the war zone and were like, we're going to take Vil. And some of the old entrenched Galmo groups were like, no, you're not going to take Vil. And it became the first proper faction warfare battle we'd had in like, other than us against PLA, but I don't see PLA. We didn't really see PLA as a faction warfare group because, as we talked about, they're just a bunch of filthy farmers. But there we go. And that was like the first big sort of faction warfare battle that had taken place again. That to me, it almost like woke the Gallente again, and they came back really hard. And since then, we've had about 2 or 3 months of really good old-fashioned faction warfare content where like each system we're fighting in had become the most dangerous one in EVE. Now my worry is now it's kind of like there's a bit of a breather. I honestly don't know what's going to happen from now. But so
people got like a taste of the good stuff, so to speak.
Yeah, it was almost like
fights,
that, yeah.
They can happen in modern EVE again.
Yeah, they can.
I think it's really You hit on a good point. I think it's really ironic that a lot of groups that we talk to in faction warfare say that pirates are sort of oppressive and causing trouble, but at the same time, all the action is surrounded around their activities and stuff. So I kind of feel like a lot of the resurgence you see in LowSec is centered around these guys and has brought energy back into LowSec at least, and as a result, some faction warfare.
From my outside perspective, it sounds like pirates are both the good and the bad. So they're the good in that they're stirring up drama, and people love drama, and it sort of serves as a spark for this emergent gameplay. But then they're also the bad because, like Genos just mentioned, the initial spark for this was RVP coming to faction warfare, and those good, solid faction warfare brawls started happening again. And the reason RVB left and the Warzone started turning into a steamroll again was because the pirates started dropping supers. So I feel like the pirates have their goods, but they also have the bad. So if they could cause some drama and not shut the Warzone down with supers, then pirates would be like perfect for the Warzone. But I think the super is allowing them to just shut down any alliance that they deem makes it such that the bad outweighs the good as an outside perspective.
Yeah, I'd definitely agree with that. I mean, in terms of the small gang stuff as well, we get a lot of content from pirates. I mean, some of our best fights recently have actually been against pirates. If you look recently in sort of like defending Enaluri, the gals have pretty much kept to the novice smalls and mediums. If we're fighting in a large, it's like actually we end up fighting pirates most of the time because a lot of the pirate groups come here, but we like shipping up. We do like shipping up. Get the hanger queens out every now and again, as we say. And the chance for us to fight in these larges against these more skilled pirate groups has actually led to some really good fights. So we've got no issues with pirate groups roaming into the war zone and getting involved with the actual faction warfare. So I don't have any issue with that. But yeah, on the bigger scale, it does go back to that Citadels. Like, as I said, Citadels are a big thing, but we've managed to have some great content without them. But it does come down to a lot of groups need the Citadels nowadays. We've become so reliant on them with the clone base and stuff, and also it's just that advantage of one side being able to ship from the Citadel, and the fact that the pirates really do play a massive part on those Citadels. And I know guys from Villa or Cause listening saying they can take them down too, and they can. They've got a good fleet. But if it was just Scale Mill coming for our Citadels, I feel we could put up a defense. But supers, nothing at all. No point.
Oh, fair enough. Let's go ahead and transition towards the end of the show here. First and foremost, we have a couple of announcements, newsy type things to happen. They're not announcements, it's news. It's stuff that's happening in EVE. So in case you missed both the Sunday show from this week and also the most recent episode of Declarations of War, both of them had an interview with CCP Rattati, and the one with Talking Stations also had Muppet Hunter on. And they have both, in combination and on their own, caused a bit of a drama happening in nullsec circles, mostly because it seems a lot of the vision that was communicated by CCP Rattati and Muppet Hunter for EVE Online is not the same vision that the null block empire builders have. And so that will obviously cause some issues. So if you haven't seen those, I'm sure it's probably going to be coming up if you watch the meta show, or if you tune in even next week or this week to the Sunday show, likely going to be discussed there as well, because it's such a big topic with those particular groups. So definitely you have your homework if you haven't heard them already and you want to be in the loop for upcoming shows in the news cycle. Go and take a listen. Also, I want to take a quick look, since we're discussing nullsec for a little bit, at the North and get a sneak peek of what it appears to be shaping into now that GOTG is like fully in what seems to me to be failscade mode. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it seems like a failscade. And at the moment, Tenal is almost certainly going into renter space territory. Like people are already set up there. It's been split up, cordoned off. Everybody has their own little constellation, so to speak. So it looks like it's full-born renter territory. Looking into Branch, interestingly enough, Fraternity has almost all of the SOV. Now, Fraternity live 2 regions away in Owasa at the moment, if memory serves, and Paragon Falls is not wholly owned by them. It also appears to be renter space. I'm saying this from outside looking in. So I would not be surprised if something happens there where space gets shuffled around, maybe renters get into branch, or fraternity moves their own alliance main staging such that they can cover multiple regions. I don't know. Branch is going to be the interesting one to see how it gets covered and supported if it is going to continue to be within the control of the PandaFam coalition. Decline still has the majority of systems owned by Dead Coalition members. However, Tests in particular is taking a number of systems around the place. There's sporadic reinforcements happening all the time. So that one will have to see where things shake out. It is very good farming space, so I would be surprised if it does not get turned into a rental space somehow. But it becomes more of a question of who takes it and who can hold it. Because as you get into Declan, as you get into Fade, you get closer and closer to the Imperium territory. And the Imperium already has, in particular, jump bridge infrastructure throughout Fade and Pureblind, giving them, relatively speaking, quick access to Fade and Declan if they want it. So as they are gaining new members from refugees coming out of Dead Coalition, a couple of alliances have already moved over to the Imperium. It'll be interesting to see if they decide they do want to keep that space either for their own use or maybe install someone up there as a buffer zone between them and PandaFam to reduce border friction. We'll definitely be keeping an eye out to see what happens there. I'm hopeful that what has happened with Tribute and Vale, where smaller groups have moved up and started to do their own thing, may also be able to occur here. I think Declan might be the best chance that that happens because it's so far from both of the large established coalitions. But we'll see, and we'll definitely keep you updated as that happens. Any news that you guys want to talk about? I did notice Zkill was scrolling by in the background on my other screen, and there's a fight going on in Ansu at the moment. Looks like hobos are defending their Fortizar against dock workers and Wangs and GMVA and a bunch of other people. So it's like legions and Nagas versus hobos in Shield Ravens, Shield Cruise Ravens, which is interesting. Anybody have any on that?
My guys are there too.
What's going on?
Yeah, it's more of the same stuff, right? Hobos is part of that anti-Wangs coalition that's going on, and so Wangs are sort of like striking back at some of their citadels. I think there's 2 Fortizar timers at the same time that Hobos has right now to defend.
Ah, right on.
Yeah, there's a lot of timers going on at the moment. I'm not can't obviously say like obviously any intel way, but there's quite a few reinforced. Quite a few were reinforced yesterday, I think. So that's going to lead to quite a few timers today, tonight, and over the weekend as well, I believe.
Yeah. Fair enough. Even though our What Does Low-Sec Look Like in 2020 series is ending with this episode, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out on how this drama and civil war and anti-Wangs coalition turns out, and keep you guys updated in the news segments if that is your jam. Moving on to player events, upcoming meets we've got on May 22nd is Eve New Orleans. If you're in that area or maybe traveling there around that time, go check it out. Tickets are on sale. Similarly, we've got Eve North coming up on June 26th. Eve Northeast, separate from Eve North, Eve Northeast is happening on August 7th. And then Eve Vegas is happening on October 23rd. So you've got every month except apparently July. Nobody likes July or September. No, there are a couple months in there. I'm bad at calendars. Whatever. Moving on. Those events are happening. If you look, there's also, I'd recommend go to eve-meets.net. If memory serves, that's the URL, because these are sort of the big regional events that they aren't CCP sponsored, they're player run. And we want to support them because we think that they're great upstart things that you would definitely enjoy. But they are very much a different style to your half a dozen Eve bros show up at a bar and chat about Eve all night and get drunk. And those sorts of events you can find all the details on, even in your local area at eve-meets.net. So go check that one out. All right, so that's all the news that I have got. Let's move into a little segment we like to call Something You Might Not Know. This is where the hosts and the guests tell the audience something they might not know in and around EVE Online. Could be lore, could be mechanic, could be history, whatever it is. Hopefully you don't know it and enlighten you. So I'll go first, and mine is that there's a little mini game in EVE. It was a big deal when it was first introduced, and then again when some interesting sciencey things happened. But it's sort of fallen off people's radars, even like I was reminded of it again because someone was asking, where does the Marshal come from? And I was like, oh yeah, there's this mini game called Project Discovery, where you are looking at data that is coming back from some satellite somewhere, some telescope, and it's the transits of planets across, or what we hope are planets across stars, and you're trying to point out those transits in the data and then send those results back to some scientists who do sciencey things. And some of them have even gotten awards for doing sciencey things, not specifically with this data, but for other stuff. And it's a cool thing. It's an easy way to spend some time. Definitely go check it out if you're into science and are interested in that sort of good enough. You can be PC. So this does have some good rewards to come with it. All right, who's up next? Let's go to Silver.
Yeah, for my segment, we were talking about, and before the show started, about some of the slang terms used for the various militia groups. So a lot of times you'll hear the word squid referred to when they're talking about the Caldari or Amar, a militia, and people wonder where that came from. Well, the Caldari and the Amar empires are aligned in faction warfare. So if you say it fast, the Calamari coalition is a squid. So that's where that came from. And also you'll hear people say frog about Calentes, but I like that one less because it's sort of a derogatory term for French. Historically in the lore, Galente are French primarily from origin. So you'll hear people say frog when they're referring to the Galente militia, but I don't like that one as much. But squid just comes from calamari.
Right on. Let's move on down to Nuke.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. I didn't know about where squids came from. So mine, I kind of relearned just recently. We mentioned that we recently lost our home system of Eneluri over the weekend. So if you are in fractional warfare and you set your death clone to an NPC station and the system flips to the other side, when you die, when you get podded, which happened to me just after, you go back to a newbie system. And if you're like me and you have low security status, you find yourself trying to make your way 10 jumps through high sec, so a little sketchy.
Wait, you don't go back to your starter system, you just go back to a starter system?
I think it's the Caldari newbie system. I don't really know. It was a long time ago for me. So, yeah, it's certainly high sec anyway. So,
right on. That's good to know. All right, how about you, Jun? I've forgotten how to pronounce your name already. Ganos.
So this is something for those aspiring small gang players. And something that I notice a lot of people don't have, which I think is madness. They don't have radial velocity displayed in the overview. Give it a go. It is a great thing, great tool. Having your radial velocity, you know exactly when basically it gives you a positive number, means they're moving away from you, and a negative number means they're moving closer to you. And that players don't have it. And they don't actually know what radial velocity means, so there we go. Give it a try. It's good.
Right on.
I endorse that tip.
We need to make stickers endorsed by Silver Suspiria. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of Talking in Stations. Thank you very much for tuning on in. Thank you very much to our guests for joining in and telling us their story and rounding out our series on what does low-sec look like in 2020. If you'd like to hear the other episodes, basically everything on the midweek show, on the midweek report from the beginning of January has been focusing on what low-sec looks like in 2020. Tons of different perspectives, all of them worth a listen. Even if you don't live in faction warfare, it's good to hear about other people's interests and gameplay. Moving on with the outro here. Once again, thanks for tuning in, guys. You can tune in this coming Sunday at 1600 UTC. Don't forget, the time change is happening. However, daylight savings time is happening if you are in an area where that occurs, particularly like in the US. I know it's happening for us this Sunday. However, the show still occurs at 1600 UTC. So if it's 1600 time and Eve, TIS is on. Don't forget. The midweek show will be happening next week. I don't know how it's going to shake out with daylight savings time yet, though. So be on the lookout. Join our Talking in Stations Discord, and we'll keep you updated on when that will go live. Or just follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Talking in Stations. If you want to catch us later, you can also go and check us out on YouTube for the VOD. that'll do it for this week's episode of Talking in Stations for the third time. See you next time.